I mentioned that I spoke with Colin Buchanan at an event held in the Wesley Centre in Pitt Street, Sydney, earlier this year, before a room of 300 people. Now, Colin is best known for his work on ABC's Play School and many of his children's songs, but I chose to ask him about his early career. Colin, you really are known by so many for Play School. I think that's not something that you feel ashamed of in any way. It was an important thing for you, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I was at the APRA Awards, which is the... I know we got financiers here, but there's another APRA, which is the Australasian Performing Rights Association. It dwarfs your APRA. And a fella came up to me who was maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, and he very earnestly said, "I want to thank you for Play School. That really meant a lot to me." I mean, the fact that he's 30 is... I should have been depressed, shouldn't I? But no, not at all. In fact, we were just talking about, Rick and I, about the treasured place that playing a part in someone's childhood and those who've played a part in your childhood, you can think back. If I said second-class teacher, or name someone who was kind to you as a child, you can think of those people. And that's a very treasured thing, and Play School was a great privilege. And
that's in your Christian ministry. You followed that through it being a children's entertainer and Christian ministry in that area. How significant is that? And what is it that's particularly significant when you're working with young people?
Well, look, it really helps to remember that you used to be one, and if you can remember what that was like. When I first started Play School, one of the early childhood advisors just leant across and during a break in filming and said, "Just think of Elliot down at the end of that camera." And of course, you're not working with children; you're working with ABC employees. And but to think of that one child at the end of the lens, and I think that's been really important, to just think of that one child who's listening to the song, and to remember what it's like to be a child, to think about what engages you and what makes you curious, and and even in writing songs, not saying everything in a song, just saying one thing, and children can really chew on that. And it's really lovely when a parent says, "We've had some interesting conversations listening to your kids' Christian music in the car, because that song about the one thing," they start talking about that one thing and they want to know more about that. It's very precious.
Carol and I were able to come to Barney's when you did your concert there, and it was the same night that Adele was doing her second night at the...
when she heard I had a concert on the same night, she was devastated. She really was. How are we going to get another 90,000 people? That's what I remember.
The truth is, Colin, that you've just released an album, if you like, called Calvary Road. And the interesting thing about this album is it's about people who've influenced you as well, isn't it? It's about the people who've made up your life, the road that you've travelled.
Yeah, it is. It is a journey. The road. Look, the road of my life took me to Burke in Western New South Wales to live in a little Christian community. I trained as a school teacher, and I started writing songs. That was my journal out there. And someone said you should enter a song in Tamworth. That was the phrase. I wasn't quite sure what that meant, but I rang up Tamworth and I sent a couple of songs into competitions, and that opened the door to music for me. And so as a songwriter, the kids' music was always there because I was writing songs for kids in church and Sunday school, but then I had this country career as a songwriter, and that's run right the way through the length of my career. But my kids' Christian music was really just something I really wanted to pop out there, because it had been sitting there and friends said, "You really should, share this with the world." And so now, 20 years down the track, I really wanted an album that perhaps is a little bit of a glimpse into the back room of my faith and life with that songwriter hat on. And it's portraits of life and faith. One thing I find, perhaps proposition isn't as potent in declaring the gospel to people in the community. There's a recoil to proposition, but stories can be incredibly unraveling for us. And in the end, we're all living a story. I know it's probably a cliche, but to realise There is no objective position to observe life from.
Now, I hope you enjoyed that first part of the conversation with Colin. Join us next week and I'll continue the discussion looking at Colin's work in the country music scene and the release of his new album.